Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good tomorrow, wherever everybody is in the world. It's Monday. It is Monday. Hopefully everyone had a good weekend. Anybody do anything exciting? What did we do? It is Monday. Hi, Emma. We had an interesting show on Saturday night. Unfortunately, Emma couldn't make it, but yeah, it's Emma. It sounded like you had a lot to recover from at the end of last week. Rabid Wombat, you are definitely among friends. Yeah, Saturday night stream we got deep, we got personal. It was very interesting. We talked about hopes, dreams, failures, shame. Well, not necessarily what you might expect going into a Homebuddies group stream, but it was good. It was it was definitely therapy for us, maybe for all of you who are watching as well. I don't know. Hopefully you still enjoyed it, even though it was a little bit of some deeper subjects.
4 digits of his social.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry. We're dealing with some important calls and things. Pete, welcome back. Thank you so much for the resubscribing. Yeah, so other than that, we did some family stuff this weekend, and looking forward to a busy week of streaming. And I'll talk about at the end of today. I'll talk about what's new, what's different for the schedule this week. Yeah, so let's get back to it. We got some juicy stories coming up today and for the next couple of days. I did manage to spend a minute looking ahead so I know in advance which stories I'm going to do and which stories I'm going to skip. There are definitely some I'm going to skip coming up. I suppose I should do content warnings. I haven't been doing them specifically, but because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in here. Today we're going to see some... there's always murder. There's usually rape involving the gods. We're going to get some incest. Or attempted anyway. So yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Emma. Oh, we gotta share these quote unquote K-pop emotes, right? All right. So shall we dive into it? So last time we read about Hercules' death, right? He puts on the poisoned robe. He essentially burns to death, and his flesh melts off. But Jupiter... There are gardeners outside. Sorry about that. They'll be done soon. Jupiter plucks out the immortal side of Hercules and brings him up to heaven. And just the... Yeah, a Hercules barbecue. And just the mortal part of him actually does die. Because we already saw it in some of the Greek stories. The Greek mythology stories, that there was a Hercules who was dead and in the underworld. Yeah, it's very loud right outside the door when they get up close. Okay, so now we're going to hear about the story of Hercules' birth. And let's see. Okay, so yeah, so it's his mom talking. Because the framing story here is that Hercules was coming home from his conquerings, and he brought home the slave girl with him, and that's why Deianira was concerned and then tried to give him the robe as to make him love her again, as like a love charm. So the mom is talking. So she says, "I remember when my son's birth was near, the weight in the womb so heavy anyone would know the father must have been Jove. And even in speaking of it today, I feel once more the pangs of labor. 7 days, 7 nights I suffered, sick and weary, raised arms to heaven, crying for Lucina, with her 2 goddess midwives to come help me. And she did come, but with a mind corrupted by Juno's hate. She heard my groans and watched me, sitting there by that altar near the doorway. She crossed her knees and laced her hands together and spoke constricting charms. I pushed and struggled, cursed Jove's ingratitude, wanted to die, screamed so that even stones were moved to pity. And other mothers came to try to help me, prayed, urged me to keep trying. So she's suffering in this labor for the ages, and yeah, so the goddesses that are in charge of childbirth and midwifery come, but they are being influenced by Juno. It's not good. And so the goddesses literally cross their legs and bind their fingers together to hold everything in and stop the birth from happening. One of them, Galanthus, yellow-haired, one of my servants, a good devoted girl, I loved her for it, saw there was something wrong and knew that Juno was working mischief. In and out the doorway Galanthus went and came, and saw the goddess sitting there on the altar, the crossed knees, the hands laced tight together, and she spoke. Whoever you are, congratulate my lady. Her son is born. Her prayer is heard. The goddess leaped up at that and loosened her hands, and I was likewise loosed of my burden, and Galanthus broke out in laughter. But the angry goddess grabbed her, still laughing, yanked her by the hair, made 4 legs of her arms, and would not let her rise from the ground. She kept her golden color, though now in different shape, the little weasel who haunts my house, still busy in devotion, and, so the story goes, since her mouth helped me give birth by telling lies, through her mouth her young are born. Okay, so so Galanthus was a servant girl of Hercules' mother, Alcmene. She's trying to figure out why her mistress is unable to give birth, goes in and out of the house looking for clues, sees the goddess, who again is like binding and tightening everything so nothing can burst forth, and then plays a trick on her. Says, "Hey, go in and say congratulations, the baby's born." Of course, the guy says, "What?" Jumps up, goes to investigate, and Hercules is able to be born. But yes, then to punish her, she's turned into a little weasel. And there's this weird story that through her mouth, her young are born. And I forget exactly what creature this is referring to, but there's this old story that this type of weasel would carry around its babies in its mouth. So the folklore was that it gave birth from its mouth. So that's where the story comes from. So there. Okay, we're going to skip the story of Dryope, and we are going to read the story of Caunus and Byblis. Caunus, oops, not that one, and Byblis. Oof, okay, ready for this one? Byblis is a warning. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, the Dryope story, a little bit too dry. Yeah, it's not the best one. Okay. Byblis is a warning that girls should never love what is forbidden. She loved her brother, and the way she loved him was not the way sisters should love their brothers. I assume you can all guess where this is going. At first, she did not know what she was doing. She saw no wrong in kissing him so often, putting her arms around his neck. The picture is what it seems, pure sisterly devotion. But somehow, this lacks color. She starts coming to see him in her very finest dresses, wants to appear a pretty girl, too much so, is envious if she sees a lovelier woman, but still she does not realize. Her fire hides, so far, never a wish, but it keeps burning. She calls him Lord and Master, hates the name of brother, wishes he would call her Byblis, not sister. She suppresses in the daytime her wanton hopes, but in her soft sleep lying she often sees the thing she loves. Her body appears to join her brother's, and she blushes deep in her sleep. and her sleep goes, and Byblis is silent, and remembers the appearance of that sweet night, and talks to herself all troubled. So now we're going to hear the poor girl talking to herself. What does it mean, this vision of the night? Does it really want, do I really want it real? Why have I seen it? He is handsome, yes. Even the envious know it. He pleases me. If he were not my brother, he could be loved, and he is worthy of me. It hurts to be his sister, to be on guard in all my waking moments and try nothing. So let the dream return again. No witness is there in sleep, and yet in sleep the pleasure was very real. Venus and winged Cupid will bear me out, what pleasure I felt, what touch of outright passion, how I lay there melting, how wonderful to remember, though the night was swift, the brief, the joy, and envious of me. If I could change my name and be united to Caunus, oh, how happy I would be to be his father's daughter-in-law, and Caunus might, happily, be my father's son-in-law. Would that the gods might give us everything together, except our parents. Would that Caunus were nobler born than I. He will make someone a mother some day, but will always be only a brother to me. All we have by way of common bond is common barrier. Why, or what do my visions mean then? And what weight have dreams? Do they have any? It is better for the gods, it seems. The gods have had their sisters. Saturn had Ops, and Ocean Tethys. Jove took Juno. Gods are laws unto themselves, and who am I to strain poor human customs to superhuman license? So she's recalling, like, the gods have sex with their brothers and sisters. Why can't we do it? I must either drive this forbidden flame out of my heart, or, if I cannot, die. And as I lay there dead on my bed, my brother will come and kiss me. What I would like needs two for consummation. Suppose it pleases me, but seems a crime to Caunus. But the sons of Aeolus were not afraid to enter their sisters' chambers. Where did I learn of them? Why have I given myself such precedence? What am I doing? Begone, disgusting flames, and let him never love me, except as brother should love sister. If he had been the first, if he had fallen in love with me, I might perhaps have yielded. So, since I could not, have refused him if he sought me, why can't I do the asking? Can I speak out? Can I confess it? Surely. Love will compel me to. I can. Or can I? It might be better if I wrote a letter. This notion pleases her. She is determined, raises herself a little, lies there leaning on her left elbow. Ooh, very specific, describing how she's laying in bed. He's going to see it, she thinks, and I confess my crazy passion. What have I come to? What a fire is burning in my poor mind. So we have a lot of repetition of this, the theme of fire and burning and flames. She puts the words together after long thinking, and her hand is trembling. Her right hand takes the pen, her left the tablet. She starts and stops, and writes and makes corrections, rubs out and changes, frowns in disapproval, nods in approval, puts the tablet down and picks them up again, and does not know just what she wants, and nothing seems to please her, whatever it is she is on the point of doing. Her face shows her confusion of shame and boldness. She had written sister. That required erasing. She started over. A lover of yours, who never will know what happiness is, unless you grant it, wishes you happiness. I am ashamed to give my name, but ask me what I want, and I will tell you. I wish that I could plead my case and give no name. Let Byblis never be known until her hopes were realized. You might have known that wounded heart of hers by her complexion, fainting, sighing, tears, embraces, kisses, the kind, if you had noticed, no sister ever gives. God help me, I have done all that I could with this deep wound, this fire within me. I have fought against it, tried to be well, tried to escape. I have borne more than you might think any girl could bear, not given way. But now, and I admit it, I know I am beaten. I am forced to ask you to help me with my timid prayers. You only can save me or destroy me. Which will it be? No enemy asks you this, but a girl, joined closely, most closely to you, asks to come closer still, asks for an even more intimate relation. Let old men have their laws, let old men quibble of right and wrong, and study up on cases. But we are young. Our need is love and rashness. We are still too young to know what is forbidden. All things are right, if only we believe it. We have examples of the gods to follow. Oof, there you go. And what is there to stop us? A strict father? Regard for reputation? Only fear. Not even fear if we have no cause for fearing. It is easy enough to hide our stolen pleasures under the name of brother and sister. As things are now, I can talk with you in secret. We fondle each other, kiss in the sight of others, and still, how much is lacking? Pity me for saying so. I never would have said it, except my love is desperate. Do not be my murderer. There was no more room for writing, as the last phrase was scribbled on the margin. She seals the letter with her ring, and moistens the imprint with her tears, and filled with shame, summons a servant, tells him, "Take this letter and give it to my..." She could hardly say it, but after a struggle, got the word out, "brother." And as she gave it to him, from her hands the tablets fell, and the bad omen troubled her mind. But still she gave it. And the servant, all in good time, delivered the written secrets. And Caunus, angry, threw away the tablets, having read a few lines only, had a struggle to keep his hands off from the message-bearer. "Get out of here," he said, "O filthy pander to the lust of things forbidden. You are lucky I do not kill you, but your death would be dirt on my hands." Oof. Yeah, I mean, hey, look, as long as we both believe it and we don't see what's wrong with it, then it should be fine. And the slave fled in terror, told Byblis all her brother had said in anger. And she grew pale, hearing herself rejected, turned as cold as ice. But as her senses gathered some strength again, so, once again, her passion came back to life, and her tongue found words to utter. "So I deserved it. Why was I so foolish to give my wound away in such a hurry to get things down in writing I had better keep to myself? I should have tried before this to test, with more ambiguous talk, his feeling. Now I have spread my sail, and never noticed which way the wind was blowing, and run before it. And I am dashed on rocks, or drowned in ocean. My ship has no retreat. I should have listened to what the omens tried in vain to tell me, when my hands dropped the tablets and the wax, if not the letters, spelled out ruin for me. That was a sign to change the day, to change the purpose. No, the day. The god gave warning, gave certain signs, if I had not been crazy. I should have spoken to him, never trusted words to the wax. I should have gone myself, told him my passion. He would have seen my tears, he would have seen the features of his lover. I could say more than I could have ever written on tablets, could have thrown my arms around him, clung to his knees, and lying on the ground begged for my life. And if I were denied it, I might have seemed to die. So many things I might have done. If none of them have moved him, there's some, put all together, might. Thank you so much, Squirrel. Perhaps that time was wrong. The servant less than tactful, waiting the proper moment. That was the trouble. His mother was no tigress. He has in him no heart of flint or iron. He was not suckled on lion's milk. He can be one. He will be. He must be asked again. And I must never tire, not while life remains. Yeah, she is not giving up. The best thing, surely, if I had the power of changing things, the best would be not to have started. The second best is to go on and finish. Caunus cannot, even if I stopped, forget what I have dared. And if I stopped, he would think I did not mean it, suspect I was teasing or a traitor. No matter what, I shall appear the victim of the god who burns my heart or my own passion. There is nothing I can do and not be guilty. I have written, I have asked for it. I am not an innocent girl, and nobody will say so. So now there's a little bit of a turn, right? She's saying, shit, the best thing is if I could take it all back, but I can't. So the next best thing is if I just push on ahead and figure out what else I can do. And then she says that basically I wrote it down, there's proof, so I can't escape this completely. No matter what, I shall appear the victim. There's nothing I can do and not be guilty. So what have I to lose? My crimes are full to overflowing, my desire still hungry. But after this is said, her purpose wavers. She hates, but yearns to tempt him, and, unhappy, commits herself again to his rejection. There seems no end to this. He leaves the country, flees from the desperate, unnatural sister, founds a new city in a foreign land, and then, they say, Byblis lost all her reason, tore at her garments, beat her arms, went crying her hopes for love forbidden, her lost hopes, and leaves her country also, and the home she hates, pursuing still her flying brother. As the Ismarian women coming home from Bacchus's rites have that wild look upon them, so Byblis seemed to all the foreign people whose lands she wandered, wailing, Caria, Lycia, past Mount Cragos, past Limera, beyond the waves of Xanthus, to the mountain where the Chimera lived, the triple monster, lioness, fire, and serpent. Even forests failed Byblis here, and she was tired. She fell, hair streaming over the hard rocks, and kissing the leaves she thought were there. They tried to raise her, nymphs from the mountainside, and tell her often to cure her love, but all their consolation fell on deaf ears. She lies there, silent, tearing the green herbs with her nails, and the soft grasses are moistened by her tears. They say the naiads hollowed a channel for those tears, unending. What else was there to do? As the cut bark oozes its pitchy drops, or as ice trickles to melting in the warm west wind and sunshine, so Byblis in her tears became a fountain, which bears her name today as it goes flowing under the somber oaks along that valley. Poor, poor Byblis. So what's particularly interesting to me, going through, because we've gone through so much of this book already, is that we've had like really famous stories of heroic deeds and fighting monsters and things like that that are very brief in Ovid. And yet here we get a story that is essentially a monologue, right? Self-reflection that this girl is going through. She's talking to herself. She's talking to herself about her dreams. She's dictating as she's writing this letter. She's relating the story. And of all the stories, this one is, like 6 pages long. And it's all just the thoughts and feelings of this poor girl. And I think that's really interesting that, again, to see the weight of pages and of lines that are given to different subjects, I think is kind of cool. So yes, Caunus he just books it. He's out of there. He runs away and goes to a foreign land. She just wanders around and eventually falls down on the ground crying. Cries so much she just becomes a spring. Yes. Oh, no, there's definitely, this is all about drama and horror and pain and suffering and wretchedness. There's a species of carnivorous plant named Byblis. I did not know that. That's cool. Cry yourself into a literal river. Exactly. Okay, we're going to skip the story of Iphis and Ianthe. It is kind of an interesting one, but it's also kind of weird and super cringy. And I don't particularly want to read it, so I'm going to skip that one for now. Okay, so now we are on book 10. How many books are there in here? 15 books in total. So we're definitely in the last section. Yeah, I mean, if it's in Ianthe, it's an interesting story. It's essentially about a family. The OG cringe for sure. It's about a family, and the dad was really dead set on having a son and told his wife that if you have a girl, we have to kill it, essentially. And so a daughter is born. The wife, the mother, she pretends that it's a boy instead and raises the child as a boy, Iphis. And then Iphis is promised to a girl named Ianthe to get married, and they are actually in love, but there's all this stuff about how it's completely unnatural and blah, blah, blah. And then Iphis's only wish is not to be allowed to love and have their own time together, but it's to, I wish I had been born a man. And then the culmination of the story is she is turned into a man so that they can have their love together. It is what it is. It's not necessarily how we would tell such a story today. Ovid goes on at length about how like mares don't get with mares and blah blah blah, and of course now we know that there are lots of homosexual things that happen in the animal kingdom. So anyway, we'll just leave that one aside. Skipping on to book 10, starting with the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. Yeah. And while that's the title, we actually don't get a whole bunch of Orpheus. Remember, Ovid is all about framing stories. So we get these like really big characters and big story like topics, but then within those stories, we have a lot of people talking about other smaller stories. Okay, so the goddess Hymen watched over Iphis and Ianthe, and now is, let's see, through the great reach of air, and took his way to the Conian country. Let's see, where do I pick up here? Okay, going to Orpheus, but brought him no auspicious words, no joyful faces, lucky omens. The torch sputtered and filled the eyes with smoke when swung. It would not blaze. Bad as the omens were, the end was worse, for the bride went walking across the lawn. Okay, so this is basically Orpheus and Eurydice are about to get married, but there are really bad omens and something really bad is about to happen. Yes, as bad as the omens were, the end was worse, for as the bride went walking across the lawn, attended by her naiads, a serpent bit her ankle, and she was gone. Orpheus mourned her to the upper world, and then, lest he should leave the shades untried, dared to descend to Styx, passing the portal men call Taenarion. Through the phantom dwellers, the buried ghosts he passed, came to the king of that sad realm, and to Persephone, his consort, and he swept the strings, and chanted, Gods of the world below the world, to whom all of us mortals come, if I may ask without deceit, the simple truth is this, I came here not to seek dark Tartarus, not yet to bind the triple-throated monster Medusa's offspring, rough with snakes. I came for my wife's sake, whose growing years were taken by a snake's venom. I wanted to be able to bear this. I have tried to. Love has conquered. This god is famous in the world above, but here I do not know. I think he may be, or is it all a lie, that ancient story of an old ravishment, and how he brought the two of you together? By these places all full of fear, by this immense confusion, by this vast kingdom's silences, I beg you, weave over Eurydice's life, run through too soon. To you we all, people and things, belong, sooner or later, to this single dwelling. All of us come to our last home. You hold longest dominion over humankind. She will come back again to be your subject, after the ripeness of her years. I am asking a loan and not a gift. If fate denies us this privilege for my wife, one thing is certain, I do not want to go back either. Triumph in the death of two. Oof. Yeah, so Eurydice dies as they're about to get married. Orpheus is appropriately very sad. Welcome, that nerd, and everyone else who has joined in the last few minutes. So Orpheus goes down. Orpheus is famous for, he's the son of Apollo. He is the most wonderful, most talented of all musicians, traditionally, and yeah, so he goes down to the underworld. He meets up with Persephone, who interestingly here is called Persephone instead of Proserpina, which was how she was called earlier. For the Greeks, or for the Romans rather, it was kind of interchangeable. Like, yes, they had Roman names for the Greek gods, but they also used the Greek names too. It didn't really bother them that much. They could switch back and forth. Hades inspired stream, yes. So he beseeches her specifically, makes reference to Cerberus, and then essentially he's got a couple points here. He says, look, if everybody comes down here anyway in the end, and if you look at the lifespan of humans versus how long they'll be in the underworld afterwards, they're only up in the upper world for a little bit, and then they're underground for a much longer time. So even if you let her go, we're just borrowing her, and she'll be back sooner rather than later. And then he says, and if you don't let her go, then 2 will die, because I'm staying here. And with his words, the music made the pale phantoms weep. Ixion's wheel was still. Okay, so essentially what we're going to get into here, and I can talk about what all these references mean, but Orpheus's music and his beseeching Persephone here is so powerful that it literally stops time in the underworld, because we're going to see references to a bunch of the famous sinners of the ancient world. And again, sinner is not quite the right word. I always mean to go and try to find a better one, because the idea of sin and sinning has such Christian overtones, and it's not exactly what it means here. But condemned, that's, yeah. So anyway, so we have these famous sinners who are being punished in the underworld. You'll recognize some of them, if not all of them. And Orpheus's plea is so powerful that it actually stops their punishments that are going on. So, and with his words, the music made the pale phantoms weep. Ixion's wheel was still. Titius's vultures left the liver. Tantalus tried no more to reach for the water, and Bellus's daughters rested from their urns, and Sisyphus climbed on his rock to listen. That was the first time ever in all the world the Furies wept. Neither the king nor consort had harshness to refuse him, and they called her Eurydice. She was there, limping a little from her late wound, with the new shades of hell. And Orpheus received her, but one term was set. He must not, till he passed Avernus, turn back his gaze, or the gift would be in vain. They climbed the upward path through absolute silence, up the steep murk, clouded in pitchy darkness. They were near the margin, near the upper land, when he, afraid that she might falter, eager to see her, looked back in love, and she was gone in a moment. Was it he or she, reaching out arms and trying to hold or to be held, and clasping nothing but empty air? Dying the second time, she had no reproach to bring against her husband. What was there to complain of? One thing only. He loved her. He could hardly hear her calling, "Farewell," when she was gone. The double death stunned Orpheus, like the man who turned to stone at sight of Cerberus, or the couple of rock, Olenos and Letheia, hearts so joined, one shared the other's guilt, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and again, like, not to say that the story of Biblis and Countess is not important and interesting and heartfelt, but we get 6 pages of of Biblis talking about her love and her pain, and we get this amazing story of Orpheus and the workings of the underworld, and it's like 4 lines long, and it's so interesting. But But that's, hey, certain things get emphasized over other things. But yes, these horrible people who are performing these punishments that last forever, they're actually able to stop and just basically just enjoy and listen to Orpheus's music. Obviously be sad by it, but yeah, crazy. Yeah, so then it just kind of has like a little bit of a meandering story. We hear the story of Cyparissus, which is a boy that Apollo loved who ended up dying. And then there's the story of Ganymede, which literally says, the story of Ganymede, a very brief one, and it's just a paragraph. And that was a boy who Jupiter loved. I'm skipping these just because they're not very good stories. But now we will pick up with the story of Apollo and Hyacinthus. Hyacinthus. You can probably guess what happens to Hyacinthus, what his transformation might be, just from his name alone. I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. So yeah, so we're in a series of stories about gods being in love with boys or men. There was another boy who might have had a place in heaven at Apollo's order, had fate seemed fit to give him time, and still he is, in his own fashion, an immortal. Whenever spring drives winter out, and the ram succeeds the wintry fish, he springs to blossom on the green turf. My father loved him dearly. So this is Orpheus telling the story, so it's about his father, Apollo. My father loved him dearly, this Hyacinthus, and left Delphi for him, outward from the world's center, on to Sparta, the town that has no walls, and Eurotas River. Quiver and lyre were nothing to him there, no more than his own dignity. He carried the nets for fellows hunting, and held the dogs in leash for them, and with them roamed the trails on the rough mountain ridges. In their train he fed the fire with long association. It was noon one day. Apollo, Hyacinthus, stripped, rubbed themselves with oil, and tried their skill at discus throwing. Real quick, so in ancient times, especially the Greeks and the Romans, when it was time to do athletic activities for men specifically, they would strip down naked, and then they would essentially coat themselves in oil, and then do their athletic activities, do their sports. It was partly, yeah, oh yes, Olympics, yeah, it's all the same. Oil is very good for your skin, all this stuff. So that's what we're referring to here. There was even a special tool they used afterward to scrape the oil off. It's a whole thing. There's lots and lots written about it. But yeah, so that's just a normal part of this story. Okay, so essentially, yes, Apollo and this boy Hyacinthus are out. They're doing their athletics. They're having fun. And they decide to practice discus throwing. Yeah, exactly, that nerd. Thank you. Apollo sent the missile far through the air, so far it pierced the clouds. A long time coming down, and when it fell, proved both his strength and skill, and Hyacinthus, all eager for his turn, heedless of danger, went running to pick it up before it settled fully to earth. It bounded once and struck him full in the face, and he grew deathly pale as the pale god caught up the huddled body, trying to warm the dreadful chill that held it, trying to staunch the wound, to keep the spirit with healing herbs, but all the arts were useless. The wound was past all cure. So in a garden, if one breaks off a violet or poppy or lilies, bristling with their yellow stamens, and they droop over and cannot raise their heads, but look on earth, so sank the dying features, the neck, its strength all gone, lulled on the shoulder. "Fallen before your time, O Hyacinthus," Apollo cried. "I see your wound, my crime. You are my sorrow, my reproach. My hand has been your murderer. But how am I to blame? Where is my guilt, except in playing with you, in loving you? I cannot die for you, or with you either. The law of fate keeps us apart. It shall not! You will be with me forever, and my songs and music will tell of you, and you will be reborn as a new flower, whose markings will spell out my cries of grief. And there will come a time when a great hero's name will be the same as this flower's markings." So Apollo spoke, and it was truth he told, for on the ground the blood was blood no longer. In its place a flower grew, brighter than any crimson, like lilies with their silver changed to crimson. That was not all. Apollo kept the promise about the markings, and inscribed the flower with his own grieving words. "Ai, ai," the petals say, Greek for alas. In Sparta, even to this day, they hold their son in honor, and when the day comes round, they celebrate the rites for Hyacinthus, as did their fathers. Most of Greek mythology reads like a fanfic. I am not going to disagree with that at all. That is a good summation of it. Yeah, so they're out doing their athletics. Apollo throws the discus. It's amazing. Such a good throw. It goes up. It goes through the clouds. It comes down. Hyacinthus is so excited, so eager. He runs to grab it, and it bounces up and smashes his face in, essentially. And he dies. Just straight up dies. And even Apollo, the god of medicine and of healing, is unable to do anything at that last moment other than turn him into a flower. Crazy. Yeah, womp womp, exactly. All right, so that takes us directly into 2 incidents of Venus's anger. Amathus, a town of Cyprus, is rich in metals, but never ask that town about her daughters, whose foreheads once bore horns, or the other ones turned later to stone. The former had an altar at their gates, sacred to Jove, the god of host and guest. If any stranger had seen it stained with blood, he would suppose that sheep or calves were slain there, and how wrong he would have been. That blood came from the murder, always of innocent guests. Venus, offended, prepared to leave her Cyprian plains and cities, and then reflected. But these lovely regions are not at fault. Her cities are not guilty. Let these horned girls, these wicked creatures, rather pay for their sins by exile or by death, or by some punishment halfway between. Let us say, a change of body. As she wondered what change, her eyes fell on the horns they carried. Those they might keep. They were big women by nature. Let them be bulls. And even so, the others, the foul Propoitides, would not acknowledge Venus and her divinity, and her anger made whores of them, the first such women ever to sell their bodies. And in shamelessness they hardened. Even their blood was hard. They could not blush any more. It was no transition, really, from what they were to actual rock and stone. Okay, so that was the entirety of the 2 incidents of Venus's anger story. Very brief, lots of stuff packed in there. Okay, so yes, so Venus is connected to the island of Cyprus. She is the Cyprian goddess, so she hangs out there, and there's this town, Amathus, and 2 sets of ladies there have been in trouble with Venus over time. So the first thing it talks about, so it says there was an altar there sacred to Jove. Remember, Jove is Jupiter, the god of host and guest. Now, if you've watched 5 minutes of me talking about mythology, rarely does 5 minutes go by where we don't talk about the massive... Thank you for following. Thank you so much. Welcome, Cats Plays. The crucial importance in all of ancient mythologies about the bonds between humans and how you treat other humans, especially guests who come to your house. This is like one of the top 3 most important things in mythologies, right? Because what do mythologies do? What are their purpose? Mythologies, which again we call mythologies, but they're just ancient religions, were about, number 1, explaining why things are in the world and where things come from. Why is there thunder? What does it mean? Are we all going to die? No, it's this and that. And again, like, really the next 2 or 3 are how you treat other people and how you live your life. And the idea is that before you have oh my goodness, before you have codified religion and stories, if somebody came you get the drama, right? If somebody comes up and murders somebody in your family, then you go and murder their family and they murder yours, and then you're stuck in these cycles of violence and nothing ever changes. And if you don't have any rules about how to treat other people, there's no way for society to flourish, for civilization, for you to get along with and work with other people. How do you ever trust anyone? It's this whole cycle that goes on and on and on. So yeah, so hospitality and what they call guest friendship was so important that it was an aspect of Zeus, or Jupiter in this case. Very, very, very important. And yes, I like to talk about it a lot because it's so important. And also of oaths, right? One of Zeus's... So all of these gods had all of these different epithets depending on what aspect of their religion or of their worship you were talking about. So one of the biggest ones for Zeus was called Zeus Horkios, and that was Zeus, sort of the watcher of oaths, and making sure that if you swear something, you have to do it. Very important for civilization to function, right? Yeah, the children, inevitably, there's usually some screaming that happens in the morning. Yeah, and then these weird things about girls turning into balls and then whores turning into stone. I don't know. But that leads us into another story that has to do with Venus. Oh, thank you so much for the subscription, Cats Plays. I appreciate that. Yeah, so another long story. So I don't know if we're actually going to get through the whole thing today. But we get into the story of Pygmalion, which again is one that you might be familiar with. Alcohol is also very important for society. This is true. So one man, Pygmalion, who had seen these women leading their shameful lives, shocked at the vices nature had given the female disposition, only too often, chose to live alone, to have no women in his bed.
I found an ant crawling on me.
Shocking. But meanwhile he made with marvelous art an ivory statue, as white as snow, and gave it greater beauty than any girl could have, and fell in love with his own craftsmanship. The image seemed that of a virgin, truly almost living, and willing, save that modesty prevented, to take on movement. The best art, they say, is that which conceals art, and so Pygmalion marvels and loves the body he has fashioned. He would often move his hands to test and touch it. Could this be flesh, or was it ivory only? No, it could not be ivory. He kisses, he fancies, she returns. He speaks to her, holds her, believes his fingers almost leave an imprint on her limbs, and fears to bruise her. It's creepy as hell. Oh, yeah, it's... Yeah. He pays her compliments and brings her presents such as girls love, smooth pebbles, winding shells, little pet birds, flowers with 1,000 colors, lilies and painted balls and lumps of amber. He decks her limbs with dresses, and her fingers wear rings which he puts on, and he brings a necklace and earrings and a ribbon for her bosom, and all of these become her, but she seems even more lovely naked, and he spreads a crimson coverlet for her to lie on, takes her to bed, puts a soft pillow under her head as if she felt it, calls her darling, my darling love. Yeah. Yeah, Emma. It's yeah, depending on when you read or hear the story or what version you hear, it's sometimes more sweet, sometimes definitely more creepy. Yeah, it's kind of like a real doll kind of situation. And Venus's holiday came round, and all the people of the island were holding festival, and snow-white heifers, their horns all tipped with gold, stood at the altars, where incense burned, and timidly Pygmalion made offering, and prayed, "If you can give all things, O gods, I pray my wife may be," he almost said my ivory girl, but dared not, "one like my ivory girl." And golden Venus was there, and understood the prayer's intention, and showed her presence, with the bright flame leaping thrice on the altar. Remember how important number 3 is. And Pygmalion came back where the maiden lay, and lay beside her, and kissed her, and she seemed to glow, and kissed her, and stroked her breast, and felt the ivory soften under his fingers, as wax grows soft in sunshine, made pliable by handling. And Pygmalion wonders, and doubts, is dubious, and happy, plays lover again, and over touches the body with his hand. It is a body! The veins throb under the thumb, and oh, Pygmalion is lavish in his prayer and praise to Venus. No words are good enough. The lips he kisses are real indeed. The ivory girl can feel them, and blushes, and responds. And the eyes open at once on lover and heaven, and Venus blesses the marriage she has made. The crescent moon fills to full orb 9 times, and wanes again, and then a daughter is born, a girl named Paphos, from whom the island later takes its name. Please stop, Pygmalion. He really did love her. Yeah. So yeah, actually, when I was looking to see how long the story was, I skipped another heading. So that story wasn't tremendously long. But, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Now, too, here in this story, he goes to the festival of Venus. He prays. He does all the proper beseeching of the gods. Venus allows the statue to become real, but essentially she just turns into a real body. There's no mention that she has any personality, any thoughts, any feelings in any of this. I mean, it literally says it is a body, and that's all you need, right? Yeah. So that happened. Thank you, Pete. I'm sure there are lots of trolls out there looking to rile people up these days. Go and vote if you haven't yet. But that is a story. There are lots of stories of Venus not being super kindly to people, but here at least she was. So the next story we're going to get into is the story of Cinyras and Mira. Yeah, Venus has a lot of... She takes issue with a lot of things that she sees and that comes her way. Let's see here. So this is quite a long one. So I think I'm just going to save that till next time. So we'll start with that next time. So we'll do that one. And this one is about... Yeah. This is another incest one. It's interesting though. There's some stuff that happens in this story. But after that one, we'll move on to Adonis. There are a couple of stories about Adonis, which are interesting, and then we pick up with the death of Orpheus. So, yes, we hear about Orpheus, but not tremendously in this book. And then we're gonna hear about Midas, Troy. Oh, so many good stories still to go. But yeah, we are, like I said, we are moving toward the last section of the book. And then, as I said before, the very last part of it, Ovid moves up straight to real people and real historical figures in his own lifetime. So we'll hear about Caesar and things happening in Rome, which is pretty interesting right at the end. Yeah. Cool. This is another incest one. Yeah. I mean, we've heard a lot of incest stories in this book, but there are some more good ones coming up. Okay, so I wanted to talk. Oscar Isaac might play Moon Knight. What? That sounds pretty cool. I'm down with that. It'd be very interesting to see. Is this like a Moon Knight? Wasn't there a rumor that they were looking at doing Moon Knight as a Disney Plus show or something? Is that real? Am I imagining that? I don't know. Oh, it is happening? Okay. I seem to remember there was something that was said about that at some point. Yeah, Moon Knight is a very interesting character and has changed so much over. It's not okay. They've done very, very different things with Moon Knight and his background and things over the years. So it'll be interesting to see what aspect of his character they use. Okay, so this week I have some cool another incest Moon Knight. Yeah. So what is happening this week? Today was mythology, super fun, great stories. Tomorrow will be toys. I got something new just came in that we're going to look at tomorrow. Wednesday will be Warhammer. I will have something new. I did not get to go pick it up this weekend, but I succumbed. I bought the Hammerfall bunker. It may not be the most amazing thing ever on the table, but I think it looks really cool. So I'll have that to work on Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon is the return of excuse me, Myths and Video Games with Pete Wiz. So we'll talk about that more as we lead up to it, but that's happening Wednesday afternoon. Zardoz, it's a cool model. Maybe they'll FAQ it in the future and it'll be able to do what it should have in the first place. Yes, and I'm supporting my local game store. Exactly. Thank you, that nerd. So that'll be Wednesday. Thursday, I will not be streaming in the morning. I'm taking the day off. Planned this time. Friday will be normal Figure Friday. Saturday is Halloween. Now, we are not doing a total Homebuddies group stream on Saturday. Some Homebuddies might be on at night. There might be watch-alongs. I don't know the whole details. I'm going to be doing a bunch of family stuff, so I will not be on. But Saturday during the day will be the premiere, my first Saturday Warhammer stream, 2 to 4 p.m. Might go longer, but that's what we're scheduled for. Yes, we're going to do Saturday Warhammer. Yes, all the butts. So it'll be a dedicated time, a little bit more than what I can do in the mornings on... I'll still be doing my Wednesday Warhammer, but this will give me a time on Saturday where I can talk about... Because again, the new stuff comes out on Saturdays. The new pre-orders start on Saturdays, and there's some doozies that are coming up this Saturday. So it'll be a chance I can talk about all the new stuff and what is essentially going to be the new stuff. Get into like how the game is changing, how the lore is changing. So it should be cool. I'm looking forward to that. something a little bit different, a little bit of a longer form. And this Saturday, I will have a special guest to help me celebrate the first episode, and it will be Jessica, and I'll be explaining to her how 9th edition works. And to you, if you are not familiar with it, I watched an interesting video. Whose was it? Uncle Adam. What's his channel? I always forget the name of the channel. But anyway, talking about how like 9th edition came out during all of this, all the pandemic. So a lot of us, while we may be familiar with having read all of the rules, most of us haven't played much of 9th edition yet, which is really interesting. So that'll be Saturday. So yes, big week, lots of fun stuff happening. Of course, all the other Homebuddies doing great things, and so make sure you're following all of them as well. And nice, Rabid Wombat, that's awesome. Yeah, there are all these cool new ways to build your armies at different levels and play different games. It's cool. I think they've done some really neat stuff with 9th edition, but we'll talk about that another day. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. I don't think so. So yeah, thanks everybody so much for tuning in and hanging out with me reading some more Ovid. Let me quickly go and see who else is on right now. Hand it over. It definitely works out better when I do have a minute to look ahead at the stories and see what's coming up, so I can choose which ones maybe to skip over and which ones to focus on. But yeah, again, some really good stories for next week. Creator dashboard. Hyper just started. Okay, yeah, pre-screen the incest. I mean, look, incest it's interesting to read about. Ancient people were definitely thinking about it. You got to have rules about it. You got to have stories. You can't go and marry your cousins. I mean, unless you're, Rudy Giuliani. Let's see. Let's get the raid channel menu up and running. Cool. But, whatever. Yeah, let's go see what Hyper's doing. Again, thank you everybody for hanging out. Thank you for the new follows and the subscriptions. I really appreciate that. And I'll see everybody later. Hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow for toys. Okay, see ya. Bye-bye. All right, raid is happening. Oh, you jerks.
And earn some more money to buy. I'm saving up for like $2 million. Should I wallpaper that really how much?
Excuse me. Whew.